he's brought through some fantastic players, but it's hinged on how he's reversed the Calcutta Cup narrative.
He's not got Scotland to a decent place in a World Cup or a Six Nations, and he's been there a long time. So I think that is the bottom line. Were France fulfilling their potential? Well, for 15 minutes they were just so much better than you could have expected.
Because despite Scotland's really poor result against Italy, they will come into this absolutely fizzing. Their fans will be so up for it. England will be put under pressure. And how are they going to deal with it? Hello, this is The Ruck, the journalists' rugby podcast from The Times and The Sunday Times. Welcome along as we're in studio on Monday following the opening round of the 2026 Six Nations. I'm Alfie Reynolds. Pleasure to have your company. Coming up, we'll look back on all the action and we'll preview some huge fixtures in round two as well. Alongside me this week, Owen Slot, back on the pod. How are you, Slotty?
I'm pretty good, thanks. Very, very good to be here with our great new signing.
And that person is Charlie Morgan, who is joining The Times. Charlie, it's brilliant to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. No, it's a pleasure to get started.
Have we got canned applause now? Will you do that, canned applause?
Do you want canned applause?
Yeah,
I'll see what I can do. I'll speak to the effects department. We don't have an effects department, but I'll see what I can do in getting Charlie some canned applause. But Charlie, welcome to the team. First day today on the Monday. Got you booked into the building. What can readers expect? I know you've already been writing. You were at Twickenham about Ollie Chessum, England's second row options.
Yeah, we can get into it later, but I think England, what you'll probably hear from me a lot over the next few weeks is that England, I'm not sure England get too much credit for making sides play badly, and obviously Wales aren't a particularly strong side to start with, but I thought Ollie Chessum was just integral to how they took away any sort of platform for Wales with that line-out variety, and he showed sort of flashes of what makes him really special elsewhere. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's got shades of Tom Croft about him, and we saw him stretch his legs, which was quite cool, and I think he's just a very valuable player for England.
You were mentioning that earlier, that phrase of England almost don't get enough credit for making teams play badly, and you often hear people say, my team lost to England, but we played really terribly, whereas actually the flip side of that, I suppose, is that England do a lot of things to, as you say, take away strengths or make things difficult for teams.
Yeah, a lot of their performances over this run have just stunk of really, really diligent preparation, as you'd expect from Steve Borthwick. Is a disciple of Eddie Jones, and that was one of Eddie Jones's calling cards as a coach. Just really diligent preparation, zeroing in on strengths and taking them away, and really frustrating an opponent. And you're right, you speak to opposing fans about England, you're going, yeah, you just didn't rock up in that area, and you're going, that's England have had something to do with that. And there's clearly building hype about this England side, as there would be over any side who've won 12 tests in a row. But that is a strength that I think potentially gets overlooked a little bit.
What a compliment, though, to say shades of Tom Croft. I mean, that is technically excellent, very fast, physical. Yeah, no, that's a very good comparison. I can see exactly what you mean. Yeah, really good.
And Slotty, you were in Paris on Thursday for the opener. You were at Twickenham as well. How did you enjoy your first round of this year's Six Nations?
Yeah, two games that in many ways were similar, in that you saw that the stronger team just out the block so fast, and both of them for some reason hit a wall at 50 minutes. Don't really know why that was. Games in both cases were done. So I don't know if it's motivation or fitness or whatever. France, just so much fun to watch, and you kind of felt that they had to do more. They had a little bit more opposition from Ireland, but both Ireland and Wales were really disappointing, and that sort of builds into I can feel already a conversation building through the Six Nations about tiers or divisions, or is England and France bubbling up to the top together, being ahead of the rest of the game, is something that is like 20 odd years old, that we had that, and we've had this magnificent period of over the last 20 years of Wales being really good. Can you remember that? Yes, but they won a few Grand Slams. Ireland being astonishingly good. Both nations sort of punching above their weights, really. And now are we going back to what makes logical sense. The two biggest sides with the biggest playing power, etc. Just being ahead of everyone else. I think that's something that we'll be talking about more and more as we go on.
Potentially accentuated by the schedule, one fewer rest week, because if you roll and roll and roll and roll, that's going to be really tricky for sides. And we'd always talk about momentum, and Will brought it up, didn't he, in the post-match pod on Saturday, but that can work in a different way, and that can be a spiral very quickly.
Yeah, and on that note, Charlie, one of the things I think with this opening round in the Six Nations is it kind of all went true to form and what you would expect. So we always say the Six Nations, the momentum shifts each week, the storylines change, the context change, and that is obviously still true. But I think you look at this weekend, everyone expected France to probably be a lot of people's title favourites. They looked really impressive against an Ireland side that many people think are ageing, and they have questions over them after that defeat. England were as impressive as a team you would expect on an 11-game winning run, and Wales were as poor as a team with their recent record in all Test matches. I suppose Italy, Scotland was the only one where maybe you'd say it didn't quite go to what people expected, but even so, I think the narrative in Scotland was certainly that's a really tough away game. It was, and it reinforced the narratives around Scotland of questions over Gregor Townsend, a team that played really badly at the end of 2025. So it feels like we've had the first round. I suppose my point is we've had the first round, but actually everything almost feels the same and where we thought we'd be.
Yeah, I think the feelings are probably stronger. We were saying, weren't we, the three sides that have lost, there's varying states of existential dread about the sport as a whole in the country, or the standing of their head coach, or how they're picking sides in the case of those three sides. Scotland, I was high on Scotland before the tournament, and Slotty, you were saying you're the same. Sort of, we both predicted
Don't tag me with that.
I know, I'm bringing you down with
Drag
me.
him down.
No, okay, let's be honest, Charlie. In your pre Six Nations prediction, where did you have Scotland?
I had them third.
Yeah, all right. Alfie?
I actually didn't do a prediction, so
yeah,
I
well
can't.
done. Okay, well, Charlie's right. I had him in third as well. I mean, yeah.
I didn't expect the only real concern I guess I had for them before was I thought that Finn Russell had looked slightly flat for Bath from a very high bar. He's been fantastic for Bath previously. I didn't expect their scrum to be as dominated as it was by Italy. I didn't expect the Scotland line out to be as catastrophic as it was, because it really was that bad. But the Italy type 5 deserve huge credit. They were fantastic. And when you tack on what I thought about Scotland before, I thought Scotland obviously capitulated late in those autumn games, but I believed what Gregor Townsend was saying when he said, well, actually the high points in those games have been some of the highest points I've had as a head coach. And I thought that they could maybe learn from that and make sure that they were more consistent in that, but just so much went wrong for them.
I think what we're saying is anyone who predicted Scotland to finish third, they were doing so on very solid evidence. It was a smart thing to say, and everyone who was damning them that was just sort of hype and looking for headlines. So but seriously, Scotland on the back of Glasgow's performance over recent weeks, the most experienced squad in the championship, I think. I thought this was a team coming to fruition rather than falling apart. But the selection of the back three did slightly flummox me.
The thing that I still find mad, and I said this on Saturday after the game at Twickenham, is I still think Scotland have a decent chance of beating England. Like, I think that game, and we will come on to it in a bit more detail later, I still think that game is such a fascinating challenge from an England point of view. The thing I've been thinking about Scotland, to pick up on what you said there, Charlie, is I remember in November, particularly the game against Argentina, saying, look, it's not Gregor Townsend's fault that those players fell apart in the final 20 minutes of the game and they ended up losing it. But you've almost had enough evidence now that you think, okay, maybe it's not Gregor Townsend's fault totally that some of those players froze on Saturday or whatever happened. It's not totally his fault, but actually he is the head coach, and we do have a pretty strong body of evidence now to suggest that this is a side that has been stagnant for the last 2.5 years. We've got all the stuff linking him to Newcastle Red Bulls that he's denying. But where are we? Where are Scotland? Where are they, in particular with Gregor Townsend? Because the noises only get loud. Like this week and this build-up, particularly once we all get into Edinburgh and Team News Day, there's going to be so much talk around that in terms of his position, his future.
Well, if you think about his tenure as a whole, he's brought through some fantastic players, but it's hinged on how he's reversed the Calcutta Cup narrative. Scotland were continually beaten in that fixture, and they've become so dominant in it that England were so neurotic in getting over the line at Twickenham. I thought last year, they circled that fixture as a game that they had to win, whatever the cost, and it was a grim game, and they did get over the line. But you could see how much they were just desperate to just get some positivity out of that game, and that's the extent to which the kind of the frame has been flipped on that. However, I think Scotland supporters now see that in the light of there's little else apart from that has gone right for Scotland in that tenure, and that coupled with, as you say, a theme now of not getting over the line in those tighter games, that's tricky. It's a tricky place for him to be.
It's all a bit sad though, isn't it, slotting away? Like, I do look at where Scotland are at the moment, and if this is the beginning of the end of Gregor Townsend or whatever, he's obviously got a contract until the World Cup. The noises now are really loud for him to not see out that, and for them to make a change. We'll see what happens. But I feel like Townsend should be remembered as a brilliant Scotland coach that, as Charlie has said, had a really good group of players, had some mega results. Okay, I take what you're saying, that maybe a lot of that hinges on beating England at Twickenham and winning Calcutta Cups. But overall, I feel like it should be positive, and it feels to me that the last kind of year to 18 months and where we are now means that that's maybe not going to be the case.
I suppose the thing is, if you say that the coach has had a really good group of players and they've been tagged with the golden generation thing, then the coach should be good, shouldn't he? And he should be achieving more than Gregor has. And also, as Charlie says, if you take away the it's amazing. It's amazing what one victory over England every year can do for your credibility and your longevity. If Scotland were to win this weekend, I mean, it would all be forgiven. It would buy him a bit of time, wouldn't it? I mean, I've sort of have always been a bit of a Gregor fan because I like the way he thinks and I like the way he talks, which obviously doesn't mean he's produced successful teams. He's not got Scotland to a decent place in a World Cup or a Six Nations, and he's been there a long time. So I think that is the bottom line, and it does seem inevitable that there's going to be a change at some point. I mean, Mark Palmer's piece in the Times today was talking about, is it mid-tournament change as Wales did last time, or is it end of tournament, and now you're at that panicky place where at what point do you change before a World Cup, because then you've got to implement a new regime, etc., etc. So once people talk like that, it sounds fairly gloomy, and it sounds like it's only heading one direction. But then again, win the Calcutta Cup and then everyone will think the world is wonderful again.
I'm sure people have, but if they haven't, I'd urge them to read Mark's report from Rome. It doesn't miss, does it?
No, it was brilliant. And actually, speaking of Mark, we were hoping to have him on the pod today to chat all things Scotland, but I got a message from him this morning, Monday morning at 6 a.m, saying, I've just got back into Glasgow. I haven't had a wink of sleep. Is it all right if I miss the pod? And I said, that's absolutely fine. When did you leave Rome? He said 6 p.m. on Sunday. So I don't know what his journey, I don't know if it's still raining in Rome and he was delayed or something, but that is the reason that we couldn't get Mark on.
Seriously, let's just analyse that for a bit. A bit soft of Mark, really? I mean, is he just reflecting the Scotland team overall? He's not turning up on the
soft underbelly, you think?
Not turning up when he's really required.
Well, maybe we'll see. The other thing, actually, the flip side of this, I suppose, is that there's always going to be a big focus on Scotland. I get that. We've led with it. Big result for Italy, though, as well. Good, really good Italian side. They themselves certainly didn't play a perfect game, but when you get those conditions and when the rain starts pouring like that at halftime, any sort of lead is going to be much easier to defend than trying to chase.
Two really nicely taken tries early on, and yeah, you're right. When the conditions changed as they did and just became apocalyptic, then that lead is really handy. It did really well. It wasn't close at the end. Scotland were pressing for that. Well, not really pressing. They were on the edge of the 22.
Isn't that fun? I find it so funny though that Scotland had struggled to do anything all game. Like the line-out's not working, the set piece isn't working. They were dropping balls, not much in terms of an attacking threat, and then all of a sudden you get final play in the red, and they go basically the length of the pitch, 30 phases in the driving rain. It's amazing how you can do that when you have to.
It's a good lesson for how crippling it can be to be that second, well, be so far second best at set piece, because Scotland's legs were just taken away, weren't they? And that, those are areas where they've competed with England in the past. They've done, and I think my impression of Scotland and the Gregor Townsend is certainly shaped by having watched so many really impressive performances in Calcutta Cup games where they've been accurate, patient, and then struck when the opportunities have come. Yeah, you're right, Slotty. If they do conjure another one, I don't know whether that changes public perception. That's where we are.
Yeah, I think I don't think it fully changes public perception in the way that it perhaps used to, but I think it just softens the blow a little bit. He certainly sees out the championship if they go and beat England, and we'll come on to the Calcutta Cup shortly. In terms of England, we were all at Twickenham. We mentioned Charlie's piece about Ollie Chessum that you can go and read now. Some really detailed stuff about what England did at the line out. Slotty, what were your thoughts overall on England's performance and what you saw from them? A game they were expected to win, and to be fair to them, they went out and did it handily.
Yeah, I find it just frustrating watching a game like that. I mean, it's fun and there's lots of points in that, but you can't go away from that going, oh, Henry Arundel's the future because he scored a hat-trick. Well, anyone there should have scored a hat-trick. I mean, but fair play to Henry Arundel, he took him well. What do we learn about where England are going and what's working, what isn't? Not a lot. The question, I think, if you're being critical, is Tommy Freeman at 13 and that. So
did you think that didn't work?
I didn't think it worked particularly. I mean, where on a day where players should have been shining and should have been demonstrating their excellence, I thought that was one area that didn't, until he went onto the wing, when you go, oh my God, how did he finish? You know, he looked so comfortable. How did he finish that try? I don't know if we're going to talk about this later, but so I've sort of gone away thinking about the England back three, and on the one hand you've got these magnificent, really fast, ball in hand, skillful, evasive runners in Faye Weboso and Arundel, and then you could complement that with George Furbank at the back, or whatever, and then you've got a completely different type of England style where you could play Stewart at the back and have Freeman and Roebuck as your wings, and you've got the best aerial game in, you've got an outstanding aerial game, and maybe that's what he'll do against Scotland, because that's going to be kicking and kicking and kicking, isn't it? So at what point do you back your evasive, excellent runners versus, it's not like Roebuck and Freeman and Stewart aren't decent themselves, but there's two very different sets of strengths there.
Yeah, and on the point of wingers, Manny Faye Weboso, he dropped out of the Wales game with a hamstring injury. He is now injured, expected to miss the rest of the Six Nations, there's a few different things we can say here. I think, one, it highlights how England have built up strength and depth on the wings, because we know how good Faye Weboso is, but you've got Roebuck, you've got Arundel, Freeman could go on the wing, still players like Caden Murley in the squad. The other thing, though, for me is it's getting to the point with Manny Faye Weboso, I'm like, oh man, just give this guy a full international block. Missed the last Six Nations, which meant he missed the Lions tour. He's had loads and loads of injuries, and we know how good he is, but we just want to see him out there. He
was one of three guys that started all of the autumns, so he had that block. But you're right, this felt like the Six Nations where he could really kick on. Fantastic form for Exeter, just fits. We talk about sort of the different ways that England can play. He's somebody that's come in quite raw. It was a couple of years ago that he came in sort of out of left field, and you thought, well, and he's sort of learnt on the job. He's a fantastic athlete, but he's sort of sharpened up in the air and things like that, and showed a real example. Someone like Henry Arundel, I would say.
But one other thing, Charlie, that you mentioned before is a link between England A under-20s senior setup in terms of styles and things like that.
Yeah, well, grim. In the same way, it was a grim weekend for Ireland, with those three corresponding island sides losing heavily. England 20s got in a real tussle with Wales, and there were some really encouraging signs for Wales in that game. But England came through the second half comeback. The A's went to Cork and thrashed Ireland A, and it just for we've kind of covered the England kind of pathway in times when it seemed not necessarily perilous, but sort of not as aligned as it is now. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. Even in the A game, someone like Alex Dombrand going back and playing really well in a potentially tricky fixture, that's a sign of the competition in the back row breeding excellence. And and that just seems very encouraging.
The pathway thing I think is really interesting. So two nations that are playing well at the moment, England and Italy. Someone within the RFU who I think fair to say is oft maligned is Conor O'Shea, who went in to do the sort of the director of rugby role after 2019 World Cup. So with England, you're really seeing this flow of excellent players coming through, and he has been integral in doing that. Now, when he was the Ireland coach, they went on a run of not winning anything for a decade or something. I mean, it was that's obviously an exaggeration, but they were very poor, and it was like, well, Conor, what have you achieved there? Well, I think what we're seeing now is what he achieved there, because he spent his time there putting in all these programs to develop the next generation, the pathway for them to come through, and I think that's why Italy are decent now. It's because of the work that he did then. So he's kind of like the Irishman who's made Italy and England good.
Yeah. Well, certainly, I was watching the under-20s game. A decent game in the end. It's a good comeback. It was almost like, it reminded me of a cricket match in that Wales put up all their points in the first half and then had to try and defend the score, and England just about pipped them to the run chase. We'll have a quick pause here. We'll look back on the rest of the matches on the opening weekend and preview a massive second round of fixtures as well, just after this. Slotty, we haven't mentioned too much about your trip to Paris. Opening night, Thursday night opener for the Six Nations for a change. We kind of mentioned how impressive this French team are. I'd imagine you didn't see anything that changed your pre-tournament prediction that it's going to be a French title.
Yeah, I did actually. Well, first of all, Thursday nights, let's not do it again.
Why?
It was just weird. I went on the metro in, and it was like a busy commuter train. No one was singing. No one had been out for a long lunch. I mean, it's like, hang on a sec, this is Six Nations. Get with it, guys. But more to the point, the travelling Irish support was minimal. You obviously had to take 2 days off work, and I just think that's not what Six Nations is. Six Nations is armies of people travelling. So got that out of the way. Don't do Thursdays anymore. That's that buried.
Yep.
And what surprised me was, I thought France would win, but they were. I thought France were a team that didn't have a lot of momentum, that Fabien Galtier was not getting the best out of, that he was changing some key players late in the World Cup cycle. Were France fulfilling their potential? Well, for 15 minutes they were just so much better than you could have expected. The power, the pace, the dexterity, the fact they gave Ireland absolutely nothing. Not that Ireland really had much of themselves anyway. If France play like that, if we get to a Grand Slam decider in Paris, it's just a phenomenal test for anyone to come up against that. The speed and physicality. I mean, we haven't even talked about Jalibert. I mean, Jalibert was just super delicious. Jalibert, Charlie's younger than me, so he could say that he's a sexy player. You've already said that. Who did you call? You called
Jonah and Atkinson.
You called Seb Atkinson sexy. I mean, if Seb Atkinson's sexy, what is Jalibert, for goodness sake?
Super delicious.
Yeah. Well, okay, Christ. I mean, I wish I hadn't said that now, but
no, that's beautiful.
He's the sexiest player on the planet as far as I'm concerned at the moment. But he wasn't the reason. I mean, you could have played Andy Good there, and they'd have looked decent. No, it was the power and pace of the second row and the back row was, and they're young guys with more to give. So that's what surprised me.
I know it is the power in that pack that sets up the platform. But what's it like every time Louis Bielbioré gets the ball in a bit of space?
Oh yeah, well, and there's that. It's just so exciting because he's just so good, and you just want it to go there because you know that something thrilling's going to happen. It's just entertainment, just bare brilliant entertainment.
How good was it though on the back of sort of maybe you two won't like this, but seeing Fabien Galtier pick a side without not so much Fickou but Aldry and Penaud, and those three sort of headline omissions, and going, well, he better have something up his sleeve here, and he really did. And that Bordeaux 10-12-13, really important for them, really big way of how they've changed things. Atisogbe as well, rather than Penaud being important on kick chase. But you're right, like it feels like the sort of time in the, I know we're not allowed to talk about World Cup cycles anymore because you've got to sort of each game as it comes and all of that, and that's true. But I think this Six Nations particularly, certainly France, are using this as a sort of, well, how good can we really be, and can these young guys bring us to another level?
Just on that, I thought the recycling of old players. No, they haven't really recycled, but saying to players that felt cemented in the side, you're not there. You don't own a place. There were a few coaches that done that. So obviously Galtier did that with Fickou, Aldred and Penaud, but Townsend did that a bit with his back three. I mean, no Blair Kinghorn or Darcy Graham on the bench. I mean, that's like similar sort of statement, if you like. And Andy Farrell not picking James Lowe. These are all sort of a year ago. You go, well, how could you ever not go near that? They're all surprising decisions in themselves. And Galtier, kind of like you're saying, was the one that was the coach. You think, I'm not really trusting Galtier, but he was the one who came up trumps on with all those decisions.
Well, I said on our preview pod for the Six Nations last Monday that I always find France such a difficult team to evaluate coming into the Six Nations, because they take a second and third string team on their summer tours, so they lose a bit of momentum there. And then particularly last November, their big game was against the Box and they ended up losing that. So I did have questions over how good are they, and then you watch them on Thursday night dismantle Ireland in 50 minutes or whatever it was, and you think, yeah, they're brilliant. They're absolutely going to be on for a Grand Slam, you would have thought. The other flip side of this, of course, is Ireland. I mean, coming away from Paris, Slotty, I know you've been writing about this as well, kind of where this Irish team is, and perhaps maybe a failure of Andy Farrell in terms of how he's regenerated this side.
Yeah, I think it is a failure, but David Walsh made a very good point in his piece on Ireland in the Sunday Times. He said, well, it's all very well to say you should have recycled and you should have blooded the younger players, but if they ain't there, then you're going to try and hold on to the older generation as long as possible. Fair point, but they do look thin, and if you haven't got the next generation coming through, then the fact that the fact that they've peaked and going down the other side just looks increasingly inevitable. And I think that's if there was ever confirmation of that, for me, that was the Thursday night game.
I think the frustration for Ireland fans as well is this kind of reliance on that Leinster system, and whereby it feels like young players from Leinster can be parachuted in, but not necessarily from other provinces. And I think that's certainly what feels like it's brewing, in the same way that the frustration at Townsend with Scotland fans has certainly set in now and is pretty violent, you would say. I think it's certainly bubbling up among Ireland fans. You mentioned the back three, and it jogged my memory of a tweet X post that I saw from Kevin Miller, who's top of the moon GW on X. Not one of the 9 players who started at wing or fullback for the Lions on the tour started at wing or fullback for their country.
I saw that, yeah.
Mad. So Freeman did start.
Extraordinary.
Freeman did start at 13. Darcy Graham 23. Marcus Smith 23. Everybody else was injured or omitted. So Daly omitted, Hansen injured, Keenan injured, Kinghorn omitted, Van der Merwe omitted, James Lowe omitted. The omitted ones are more interesting, aren't they? Because they're where their coach has gone, sort of thanks but no thanks, we're going in a different direction. Including Andy Farrell, who picked James Lowe for the Lions, now going in different directions. Really interesting. Yeah,
that is extra. There's a number of those players though that you also look at it and you think, yeah, that makes total sense. Like James Lowe, even on that Lions tour, you really got the felt that it wasn't producing the level of performance we've seen from him previously. The other, I suppose, position from an Irish point of view that is, I mean, it's been a big debate for Ireland since Johnny Sexton retired, but is fly half. And do you go with Jack Crowley? Do you go with Sam Prendergast? The whole of the Irish team didn't have a great game, but Sam Prendergast certainly didn't have a great game. Do you think it's right that Farrell sticks with him going forward if you're looking to build for a World Cup? Dare I say it, Charlie?
Well, I think we're going to talk a lot about ceilings in as far as the Six Nations in the context of a World Cup cycle, and if you're going to test your ceiling as a side with Sam Prendergast, you stick with him. However, Jack Crowley isn't so far down the line that he's not going to be around at the next World Cup. So if he feels like that was such a torrid experience that he needs to flip it again, then he shouldn't have any second thoughts. I think I really like what Sam Prendergast offers going forward. I'm not sure that Ireland side is equipped to sort of to give him what Leinster give him. And maybe that means it's time for Crowley for over the rest of this championship. They just looked, with ball in hand, and they just looked like they were trying to rediscover the fluency of the phase play that was so important to them. And it just looked really predictable. Really, it reminded me, and this is a terrible sort of indictment, but it reminded me of those COVID games where they played against England, and they were trying to sort of embed that, and it was right at the other end of this phase shape coming in, and England and Sam Underhill just sort of ate it up for two sort of games in a row. Just ate it up. Were identifying ball carriers, smashing them, losing momentum, and yeah, it felt, well, at the start of all of that, they went to a kick contestable game and just didn't get any change from that. So it sort of looked like they ran out of ideas very quickly.
It's funny because I remember so clearly at the end of the World Cup, which was obviously such a disappointment for Ireland and losing in just the most gutting kind of way, and this sea of Irish over there and this feeling of this is on, that they could genuinely win this thing. But I remember feeling at the end of that of, yes, this is gutting, but Ireland will be okay. They've got the school systems, they've had a successful under-20 side, they've got Leinster that are one of the best teams in Europe, they have pathways coming through. So, and I'm almost surprised that we find ourselves at this point a couple of years later.
Nick Timoney, Chinker for them off the bench. He was very good. But yeah, that's what you're scrambling around for positives in that performance. It was pretty chastening overall.
Yeah, I think maybe we've in the years when Ireland have been so successful, we've gone, oh, they've got this great school system, and they do have this great school system, but I think if you looked at the numbers of schools that are playing quality rugby, I don't think they are that many. I think you've got a few Dublin schools that have these famous rivalries, and they're like sort of semi-pro sports academies,
yeah.
where people just go to lessons sometimes when they're not doing rugby. But I don't think in terms of numbers they're that great, and I don't think it's spread around the country particularly. So I think that's just another thing that underlines how they've been performing above themselves over the last decade and a half.
And they take on Italy this weekend. I mean, all of a sudden that game takes on a whole different complexion, doesn't it? Ireland off a really poor defeat, admittedly, against a really good France side. Italy with a really good win against Scotland. Like, the way you're looking at that, all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, blood, this game feels totally different.
It's just going to be brilliant, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
you wouldn't have switched it on in previous years,
yeah.
but now it's got unpredictability, which is what you want, is there. That's great.
Mm. How realistic is it, Charlie? Do you think that Italy go and do the job or not? Are we getting a little ahead of ourselves with where Ireland find themselves by saying that?
Ireland would be big favourites for sure, but I think maybe the Six Nations is a load of sides who are scrambling around for the underdog tag. I feel like France don't really entertain that, but certainly everyone else does, and Italy will sort of love having that win, which is, you always look, don't you, at the schedule of and one or two games. For example, with England this year, it's Murrayfield. They will circle and they will go, our tournament's sort of defined by that. I think Italy have sort of got a win in what is a very important one for them already. I would still back Ireland, but I think certainly in with a shout.
They'll also come with a scrum, won't they?
Mm.
So they'll come with a decent scrum, which you saw against Scotland, and we know that Ireland have personnel weaknesses there, which actually weren't exposed by France, which might be due to the refereeing or whatever. But that's one area where Italy might really impose themselves.
Really looking forward to that fixture, which we're all going to have to try and... Are you at Murrayfield, Slotty, this weekend?
No, I'm in the Winter Olympics. I'm competing in the aerials on Saturday.
Well, how far is very different for you. I was just about to say we'll all have to try and watch the Ireland-Italy game from Murrayfield, but you won't. Me and Charlie will. Scotland, England. I mean, Charlie, you just used the phrase that England would have circled it and felt their Six Nations would be defined by it. Expand on that. Is that where we are with this fixture?
They're 3 out of 4 that they've lost since over the last decade. So, and the one game was, we had to get an absolute wild one in the monsoon, where
2020, the last time they won that.
Potentially did George Ford get the ugliest drop goal you've ever seen? And it was really weird.
It was the Genge try.
Genge try, calling everyone sausages afterwards. That sausage gate. So yeah, they.
And that was one where no one could get home the next day.
No one could get home.
We just stayed in. No, we didn't stay in the pub for the whole weekend. But
no, obviously
felt like it.
I got home on a really slow, really wobbly train. I remember that, and that's just jogged a memory that I was trying to forget. But yeah, no, it feels really big for them, and I think this, as much as they are, as I said, right at the top, they are extremely diligent as far as focusing in on what's coming down the pipe from the next opponents that they've got. I think they will know that this is really important. There's the whole Will's written about it today. I think they're a good side away from home, England, without maybe getting those results. They clearly sort of I think Steve Borthwick, I always think about Steve, when I think about Steve Borthwick, the coach, I think about a Leicester Tigers game when he went to Bordeaux and won in the year that they won the Premiership title, I think, the same year, but just came with a plan, and George Ford was instrumental to that, where they just didn't get bored of this plan. It was a lot of kick pressure, but came with some clever stuff at the line out and things like that, and I think they'll have a lot of sort of subtle little quirks, but Gregor Townsend has absolutely had the wood over England over his tenure, so it's not going to be easy at all.
You feel it's be a really tough away day as well for England in this, I think, and that's why I agree. Will's piece talking about England have had some statement results, but haven't necessarily had the statement result away from home. Why it's so intriguing, because despite Scotland's really poor result against Italy, they will come into this absolutely fizzing. Their fans will be so up for it. England will be put under pressure. And how are they going to deal with it? Now, I think we've seen an England team, actually, that have answered a huge amount of questions over this 12-game winning run. And I think they're capable of dealing with them against Scotland in Edinburgh. But that's why I'm so intrigued to see how they get on.
I think the psychology of this fixture has possibly, maybe the psychology of this fixture has changed now. So over the last decade, I think it's been one that England have been scared to lose, when England think that they should win, and the more times, the more occasions that Scotland put one over them, England have doubted themselves, and they know, oh, we can lose to these guys, or they always do us. Now, does this England now on a streak of 12 victories? Do they really think that? I'm not sure they do doubt themselves anymore. And if there is self-doubt anywhere, then Scotland, after losing to Italy and being lambasted, and etc., who's going into that game concerned that they aren't going to fulfil their potential? It must be the team in blue.
I guess the flip side as well to what I've just said, in that the atmosphere is going to be raucous and England are going to be put under pressure. If England start well and things are going badly for Scotland, then it could totally do a 180 on them as well.
If social media is anything to go by, that's
never
close.
The best
that's
barometer,
close. But that's close to I think that's certainly close to the surface.
Yeah. How do we expect England to approach this game? We mentioned earlier about the combination of wingers they could pick, and they've obviously got these bigger wingers that are brilliant in the air. Do you think they go for that more aerial game?
Yeah, I think that aerial game they're so sophisticated at that now, and I actually think my sizzling take is I actually think that France have taken a little bit from how diligent England are with how they coordinate those chases, how good they are. And it's not a fluke that those deflections seem to often get momentum out of those deflections. So I think that will be a big part of it. You've seen that was a big reason why Scotland went with Carl Stein. Because he's very good there. So a lot of this will be decided in the air, and then those scraps, stroke crumbs, whatever trendy term you want to use, about the sort of the back of that. They'll be licking their lips at what Italy did to the Scotland scrum, as Slotty said. I think they're two huge battlegrounds, and then it comes down to in the past. Scotland have really cleverly sort of used Finn Russell as bait a bit. And they've used their other distributors, so Tui Pelotu and Stuart Hogg, even if you go back really far to a Ben White try, where they've sort of found space away from Russell and capitalised on that. It will come down to how clinical sides are when they do get that foothold through sort of aerial pressure or set piece pressure. How clinical can they be sort of on the back of that?
So are you saying what I was suggesting earlier, that England should or might drop their hat-trick man?
Well, I think they probably keep it. Well, two things. One, he's improved there. So if you think so, Arundel, milked the penalty that started England off because he chased really hard and Archie Griffin stepped in front of him. He won one back in the air, which indirectly led to that period of mauling pressure where Wales lost 2 yellow cards. So it's whether he feels. I think it's all connected, isn't it? As you said earlier, it's all connected. Do they stick or twist with Freeman at 13? I would stick because I think his upside as a 13 is very, very high. And I think with him there, you just have so much pace in the side because obviously you've got 2 more wingers and you've got the back row that they like picking. So if you stick with him and Dingwall, then you're going to want Roebuck. I would say Roebuck is one of the very best in the world in the air at the minute. And then it looks like George Furbank isn't being considered if he's only under rehab. That might change, but I guess the kind of the sort of toss up is whether they bring in someone like Caden Murley, who's decent for the A team and is very good in the air. But I don't know. I quite like. I think they know that Arundel's pace is such that, and we saw it. There was a direct example of it for his hat-trick try. It turns turnovers into 7-pointers, and they haven't necessarily had anybody like that since Johnny May was in his pomp and just on that hot streak. And when there's this collective awareness that when there's a mistake, they're almost looking up, going like France are with BRE, when they're looking up, going, right, I can hoof the ball into space and we've got 7 points, or I can just feed him directly. So I think he is a really big asset, and you would like to think. That's a bad headline, isn't it? Dropping a hat-trick man. That's a punchy call.
We don't need the hat-trick guy. Where do you think Steve Borthwick would be is on the psychology, his selection of Tommy Freeman at 13? So he put him there because he thinks it's going to work. So there's a debate now of whether it does work. So if he changes his mind this weekend, then he's almost already saying, "Oh, I got that wrong." No coach likes to admit they get it wrong. Eddie Jones would, if he'd done it, he'd stick with it for the next 2 years, wouldn't he? I think Borthwick is far more pragmatic and less egotistical. So it's easy for him to say, "We had a go. It's not right." I mean, I'm not saying it is or isn't right yet. Stuart Barnes wrote a really good piece in the Times explaining why it wasn't right. Alfie, you say you still think it was good. I mean, it's only really been one game, so.
It's gone down.
I just dropped my biro. Live on air. No, not live. Anyway, how much time do you give it to make it work? Because to say it's going to work on day one is, that's wishful thinking anyway.
That's really interesting. I think he's definitely less egotistical. However, I also think he's pragmatic enough to know that he wants to give it a really good go and wants to see it more than the 3 starts that he's had already, to know whether it works or not. And I think that because people have sort of, if you think of the people that have come in and sort of settled and then eventually done well as test match players under Borthwick, it's because he's been patient with them. So Ben Earl, Joe Marchant at the World Cup had been in and out under Eddie Jones and hadn't necessarily been given time to settle and feel comfortable, and Borthwick showed a level of confidence that they would eventually become. They eventually had what it took because he saw the quality in them, but he gave them time. And I think that's what he'll do with Freeman. I don't think yet three starts at 13 is enough to know. Yeah, and I think they suspect that Freeman can be world class there, so I think they'll give him a chance.
Yeah, I feel like you get the impression with this England setup that Freeman, in an ideal world, if they can get it working, that's what they want come World Cup time. And because it's so fascinating, isn't it? That I know Ollie Lawrence has had injuries, but Ollie Lawrence has been so good and brilliant for Bath. But for whatever reason, it just feels like England ideally want that person to be Freeman that they can convert into an outside centre. So I think they will stick with it. And then the thing that intrigues me maybe with this Six Nations is, do they stick with it throughout? Do they stick with it for the games they feel they can get away with it, which Wales obviously would have been one of those. So going away to Scotland, do they think, let's put Freeman on the wing because we know he's so good there? It's maybe not the game to be working around and experimenting. Same if we get to Paris final weekend and it's the title game that many of us hope it will be and all that sort of thing. Do you put him in that sort of cauldron and do you test it out in that? So when they use it, I personally think it's really intriguing, but I definitely feel like it's what they want going forward long term.
The preoccupation I see with Lawrence, which I think is defending the 13 channel. I think they always post him at 12, and they've had Dingwall or Slade or whatever shirt they're wearing, that's how they've set up from first phase. And I think that's what they're slightly nervous about. And on the flip side, that's what they really like about Freeman. Is his mobility and his pace there, because it's not just off first phase, that's in phase play if you're getting up and shuttling across the pitch and you're maintaining width in the front line. But I actually thought, and to throw another potentially sexy midfield out there, I thought Seb Atkinson and Freeman would be really interesting. However, we're going back to mugging off Paul Fraser-Dingwall, aren't we? In this facilitator role where he's clearly more important to the guys left and right of him in the pitch and on the pitch than he is sort of to us sort of picking our fantasy sides. But no, I think Dingwall's performance certainly at the weekend and the kind of credit he's built up deserves a crack at this Calcutta Cup.
The other thing as well, going back to impressions you get from the England coaching team and Freeman being a long-term 13 option, the other thing that Borthwick, and he mentions this all the time, is the Northampton spine, isn't it? He really values players playing together and playing together for their clubs. Final game on the Sunday, Wales-France, reported 25,000 tickets unsold. Don't think Wales did anything at Twickenham to get too many Welsh fans saying that they absolutely have to snap up their seat at the Principality. How fearful are we for Wales here?
You could look at it two ways. France have this squad of fantastic players, so might they rotate given the schedule? But actually, I think there are enough newish combinations that they will want to maintain impetus in this tournament, and I think that kind of spells trepidation to me. And I don't know what is. You always say that apathy is the kind of the very bottom of the barrel, but yeah. it was almost pity. It felt like at times at Twickenham from supporters watching that, and they avoided shipping 50 by the width of a post. You have to say that it's looking that might get close to that. You want to see Wales get a foothold. They shot themselves in the foot enough to know that there's enough stuff that they can eradicate, so that the bizarre cascade of penalties that they gave away in that first quarter, some of that is self-inflicted, and that can be easily improved. I think they just stick with the halfbacks that they've got in Thomas Williams and Dan Edwards, and you spoke, didn't you, about the combinations that they can maybe tweak in the back row to just give them a bit more oomph in midfield as well, and they see where that takes them. But France are kind of will be so buoyant after that Ireland game that it just looks worrying.
I can't disagree with a word of that. It's worrying. I do think, as you say, that there are some proper fixes. Like, you don't have to give 10 penalties away in 20 minutes, and your line out could be better, and maybe you take 3 points when they become available to keep you reasonably sort of positive. But if there's a fixture that you know the result to, then that's the one, isn't it?
That is the one, yeah. Slotty, when are you off to Italy then for the Winter Olympics?
Well, I'm going on Thursday. I'm intending to do some ice hockey on Thursday night.
Nice.
And then I'll be in the Skeleton on Friday, and then probably ski jumping Saturday.
Not bad, eh?
Yeah.
Not bad. When do you swan back in for the Six Nations? Or are you done now? Are you first weekend and then...
Oh, I'm coming back for Grand Slam games.
There you go. Yeah, that's it.
Only medals and trophies this year.
Well, we'll see you in Paris then for that. Charlie, great to have you with us. Appreciate the Ruck debut. Great to have you on.
Thank you, pal.
And listen, as we say, Thursday will be your next pod. That'll be from Edinburgh. Team news ahead of the Calcutta Cup. In the stands in Edinburgh on Saturday night as well, and then we'll do it all again next Monday to review all the action. And you can also watch these Monday episodes on YouTube. Head over to Times Sport on YouTube and you'll be able to see us in all our glory. Final thing for me to plug actually is the 9th of March, the live event. We've got the Ruck Live. It's at the Twickenham Stoop. Go onto the Times on the website. You can get your tickets, and we're going to have Serge Betson and Courtney Laws with us. That's ahead of the final week of action, that massive game in the Stade de France between the French and the English. We'll be back with you on Monday. This has been The Ruck, the journalists' rugby podcast from the Times and the Sunday Times.